Yes, sir. So we have most of the participants about to join, and will be shortly starting.
Sure, Tanmay. Can I share my screen in the meanwhile?
Uh,
Or should I
so,
wait?
so just I'll just introduce,
Sure.
and we'll have a short
Okay.
participation.
And
Then
then,
we'll follow that.
fine.
Thanks.
The basic screen may be shared.
You are already co-host, Dr. Sandeep. Whenever you want, you can start after the introduction or not. Thank you.
Yeah,
Or,
Absolutely.
or if right now, if you wish.
definitely,
No,
definitely.
no, I
We'll
think
introduce
Tanmay was right,
participants.
ma'am. Let
Okay,
the proceedings take
please.
its own turn.
Sure.
Tanmay, then we can begin.
Absolutely.
Yes, please.
So I once again take the honor of introducing our speaker for the second session of our fifth day of this faculty development program organized by Manet and under the Atal. And so basically, our speaker is Sri Sandeep Atre, who would be sharing his experience and expert views on the topic emotional intelligence, the science of living. Dr. Sandeep Atre is an internationally recognized emotional and social intelligence expert, and he is also the founder of Socialigens, a venture specializing in development of social and emotional intelligence. Through its online courses rooted in neuroscience and psychology, he is also the co-founder of CH Edgemakers, a leading coaching group of Central India. He is an author of two books, Understanding Emotions Logically and Observing Nonverbal Behavior. He is also a noted blogger and a writer. In his career of close to 2 decades, he has trained professionals of more than 50 companies and thousands of students to shout out and excel in interpersonal and intrapersonal matters. We once again extend a very, very warm welcome to you, sir, and we hope to learn from your vast experience, sir. Over to you, sir.
Just a minute, Dr. Sandeep. Can you adjust your camera a little bit lower so that we can see you better?
Is it
Thank
fine
you.
now?
Thank you.
Sir?
And my dear
Better,
friends,
better.
we have been talking for these days on the left brain and right brain, and how that most of us are concentrating our attention on the left brain. Today, we are learning how to come to the right brain so that the input of joy, happiness, harmony, everything comes to life in a more wide manner. And here we are having Dr. Sandeep ji. Now you take over. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'll just share my screen.
Please.
Great. Tanmay, help
Yes,
me
sir.
understand. Is
Perfectly
it
visible,
visible
sir.
to you? I am
Yes, sir.
visible to you. I am audible to you.
Perfectly fine. All is well. Let's start.
Great. Nice. So good afternoon, everyone. Uh, to speak after Meena ji, though I haven't heard her. Yet, to be honest, her smile is so infectious that I got a sneak peek of what you must have experienced in last hour or so with her. Well, first of all, as I said, the topic itself, emotional intelligence, the science of living. I would get into topic, but before that, uh, I would like to thank Meena ji for giving this opportunity that I'm here in front of you sharing, some words from my experience and, as Tanmay rightly said, my expertise. I won't say my expertise, my area of expertise would be a better way to put it. And I think the best part is that when you are talking to your own fraternity, in Hindi, there's a wonderful word, kunba. So when you're talking to your own fraternity, there's a different kind of joy to it. For the obvious reason that I believe that these days people do not talk. They either speak or they, don't. So my point is there is always something in between talking. Well, I think I'm bereft of your side of words, but then I'm sure that I'll someday get an opportunity where we can talk actually. However, what I'll do today is I'll adopt a talking mechanism or talking manner of training today. Because I think a teacher somehow has to choose his or her pick, whether he wants to be, a speaker, whether he wants to be, uh, you know, uh, a conversationalist that day, or for that matter, whether he or she wants to, get into insights of a topic. Today, I'll choose, conversation or a talking tone. Okay. Now, before I begin, I'm sure most of us would already be tuned into these conversations. Still, I would make two requests before I start the session. My first request is that please avoid multitasking. Everybody out there, I think this medium of education, this technology enabled medium of education, gives us great power of anonymity. Believe me, there is great power in anonymity. And people who are anonymous, they become extremely dangerous or extremely fecund, extremely productive. And I think, though most of you are mature, most of you belong to our own fraternity, so you wouldn't really be taking, undue advantage of this anonymity. Still, it's my job as a teacher to remind you of an important point, that because my work has been in the domain of neuropsychology, in our domain, we say brain cannot multitask. That's it. Brain cannot multitask. It always switch tasks. But because it switches tasks, and when I talk about brain, I'm talking about three different layers of a brain. Of course, the brain stem does multitask. Without it, we wouldn't really be surviving right now. But I'm talking about our, the uppermost brain, which is called seat of thought, that is cerebral cortex or neocortex. And I think right now, all of you are listening through that neocortex, and thinking and discussing is a cortical activity. So at the end of the day, it is very difficult for cortex to multitask because it cannot. It only switch tasks. So my request to all of you is, please do not multitask. I know there will be a temptation to do something else, but please do not multitask. Well, there is a reason to it. The reason is pretty simple, that whenever, and this is something that is well established in management domain, that whenever you try to effectiveness, whenever you try to raise efficiency, effectiveness tends to go down. Whenever you try to improve effectiveness, efficiency tends to go down. In fact, for this very reason, management is such a rewarding job, because you get paid most for managing, isn't it? The reason is pretty simple, because it is about marrying these two important concepts of efficiency and effectiveness. But believe me, when it comes to learning, whenever you'll try to improve efficiency, your effectiveness is bound to go down. And I believe that today all of us are here to improve our effectiveness. And that's why, please do not try to increase efficiency. Do not try to achieve far too many things in one moment. In fact, a lot of people ask me that, Dr. Athre, जिंदगी में कहीं पहुंचने के लिए कहीं जाना पड़ता है ना? और मैं हमेशा से कहता हूं, नहीं, जिंदगी में कहीं पहुंचने के लिए कहीं जाना नहीं पड़ता, जहां आप हैं वहां और ज्यादा होना पड़ता है. So I really believe that excellence and success, they're side effects of totally being where you are. And that's why it is extremely important for us to stay tuned at this moment. So that was my first request. Please do that. Please stay in the moment. It will not be easy, believe me. But I talked about this because there is always an etiquette to everything, and etiquette to learning is total immersion. Have you ever understood the word Islam? Islam means total submission. It's a beautiful concept of Islam, total submission. I believe that everybody who is, right now learning should actually get into total submission to this process. Well, when I talk about this, I said there will always be an etiquette. So this is the etiquette of learning. Avoid multitasking. I recall Nida Fazli's great, couplet. बाग में जाने के आदाब हुआ करते हैं, किसी तितली को न फूलों से उड़ाया जाए. So I believe that just the way there are etiquettes of getting into a garden, there is always etiquettes of getting into a classroom. And I consider this as a classroom. And my request is, please make sure that
Sure,
you're there, everyone. Second request, before I continue, my second request is, please make sure that you remember that when we are discussing this concept, when we are discussing this concept, there will always be a lull at some point of time during a session. But I always tell people lull doesn't mean dull, you know. Most of the people don't realize this, but lull doesn't mean dull. So at some point of time, you are bound to, believe me, hardly matters who is speaking, you are bound to feel a sense of boredom at some point of time. And when you feel that sense of boredom, then stick to it. Do not then get into the monkey mind habit of getting distracted. Okay, stay there. If you get bored, that's always wonderful. In fact, I've always subscribed to the concept that excellence in any domain can only be attained when you are willing to go through extended periods of boredom. I repeat this line. Excellence in any domain can only be attained when you are willing to go through extended periods of boredom. People don't realize, but boredom जो है वो focus का रियाज है. Boredom is in fact the most important quality of any good learner. And a good learner has to go through boredom. Excellence is on that side of boredom. And these days, people do not become excellent or they do not become experts because they do not want to get bored. So, my request, whenever there is a moment of boredom, just stay there. Believe me, that is a very, very important precursor to the focus that you'll attain just after that. So, these were two important requests that I wanted to make before I proceed. Now let's come to emotional intelligence, the science of living, the topic. Now you might be wondering, why is it termed science of living? Well, I would love to get into that point, but I would rather avoid that. Why? Because believe me, it is a topic in itself. And I wouldn't be able to do justice with it in the duration that we have today. But I am a man of science. I've always said this. Science is the systematic study of knowledge based on empiricism, experimentation, and methodological naturalism. So anything that doesn't really get weighed properly on these three aspects finds it slightly hard to get into my brain. Well, people normally, scoff at science these days. But I believe science is a way of living, just the way any other way is. And if you belong to scientific domain, it doesn't mean you do not respect other domains. I mean, of course, all truths can coexist. Why have one truth always overpowering or overawing another? So I have always believed, and this is my belief, this is how I stand today. My belief is कि जिस ज्ञान में विज्ञान ना हो उसका संज्ञान नहीं लेना चाहिए. So I am a slightly more, I won't say biased, but slightly more oriented towards science for this particular session. Okay, I have been a firm believer कि शोध के बिना बोध नहीं हो सकता. Unless you research, you cannot gain knowledge. Of course, I'm not talking about personal knowledge or something that you gain from inside, but then उसमें भी जो है वो पिंड और ब्रह्मांड का जो है वो सैंपल तो लेना पड़ता है. Well, I'll come back to that at some point of time. Coming back, as I said, the emotional intelligence, the science of living, is what I'll be talking about today. And when we talk about the science of living, emotional intelligence, do not forget, is actually a scientific skill. It is one of the top 10 work skills, and it is the essential skill of all intrapersonal and interpersonal skills. That is soft skill. Okay, so here we go. Emotional intelligence, the science of living. We begin. When we talk about emotional intelligence, I actually talk about emotional and social intelligence. What do I mean by that? Well, if you get into the research of emotional intelligence, you'll realize that emotional intelligence as a term came first. No, actually, social intelligence is the term that came first. Right through 1920s, this was the term which made the most important mark in the domain of behavioral science. But then came emotional intelligence, of course, popularized by Daniel Goleman. And then emotional and social intelligence, this came as the most important skill that almost all the researchers in this domain have agreed upon since 2006, after the book called Social Intelligence by Daniel Goleman was published. So when I talk about emotional intelligence, from the research point of view, it is actually emotional and social intelligence. However, when you'll get into research, you'll realize that you'll hardly find a paper with emotional and social intelligence as a variable, because of course, most of the people haven't really, gone into review of literature of anything that has been after 2006. So I wouldn't really get into nomenclature much, but we'll talk about this concept, whether you call it emotional intelligence or emotional and social intelligence. That's what we'll get into. I have a simple model today that I would like to discuss with you today. The topic, emotional and social intelligence, what is it and how can it be applied? Well, in order to explain that, we have a very clear, simple model. Emotional and social intelligence is actually made up of three subskills. One, awareness. Second, attunement. And third, adaptability. So awareness, attunement, and adaptability. These three together form emotional and social intelligence. In fact, if you'll get into details of this construct, of course, I wouldn't want to, but still, I would just give you a primer into it. Awareness and attunement together are called emotional intelligence, and attunement and adaptability together are called social intelligence. And all these three together, they are called emotional and social intelligence. Okay. So we'll talk about only these three terms today: awareness, attunement, adaptability. And if you want to apply emotional and social intelligence, then you have a very clear formula to it. First, apply awareness. Second, apply attunement. Third, apply adaptability. Well, it is a copywritten model of our company. And of course, it has gone through all the aspects of a model that has to get into taxonomy and then theory and everything else. So emotional and social intelligence boils down to three skills: awareness, attunement, adaptability. Let's see what awareness means. The first is awareness, the understanding of what is going on inside oneself. Exactly. When you talk about what is awareness, then you'll realize that awareness is the understanding of what is going inside oneself. Well, I think somebody has actually made an intonation. So what I'll do is I'll share this again, Meenaji, because I think somebody has done something to the screen. So I'll share it again. Okay. So when we talk about awareness, awareness is the understanding of what is going on inside oneself. Well, what does it mean? What is going on inside oneself? Well, to me, there are three important aspects that you need to tap into when you talk about what is going on inside oneself. First is emotional state. So how are you feeling right now? You're feeling anxious, you're feeling restless, you're feeling bored, you're feeling sad, you're feeling contemptuous, you're feeling disgusted, you're feeling unattached, you're feeling inclined. How do you feel? That's a very important aspect. So it's important to understand what is going on inside oneself. Problem with most of us is that we do not really, stand apart from ourselves and ask ourselves, how are we feeling right now? And it is important to give words to it. Please understand. It's important to have rich emotional vocabulary. In fact, as Sir was talking about right brain, left brain, whenever you feel down, it is important for you to give words to that feeling. Why? Because left brain activity of language, it then gets integrated with right brained emotional experience, and you get a whole brained experience of feeling relieved. And that's why it is important that whenever you feel anything, you always try to give words to that feeling. I still remember, we were talking, I was talking to one of my colleagues, and I asked him, how do you feel? And he said, fine. And I said, I don't take fine for an answer. You tell me, how are you feeling? Because I can see you're not feeling fine. At least to me, that doesn't really seem fine. And he said something so beautiful. Of course, both of us, share love for Shairi. And he said something so good. He said, how do I feel, Sandeep? And I said, yeah, how do you feel? And he said, I get reminded of a couplet by Javed Akhtar. And he said, ढलता सूरज फैला जंगल रास्ता गुम हमसे पूछो कैसा आलम होता है. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, that's how I feel. And the moment he said it, he felt so relieved after saying it. Can you actually understand what happened there? I'll tell you what happened there. ढलता सूरज फैला जंगल रास्ता गुम हमसे पूछो कैसा आलम होता है. Do you really understand how it means? I mean, just imagine. You are in a sprawling jungle. The sun is setting and you do not have a path in front of you. How do you feel? Of course, you feel sad, you feel lost, you feel worried, you feel everything. And you cannot really explain it in words. And he explained so beautifully through words, but not necessarily in a sentence, but through poetry. And when he said it, after that, both of us had a wonderful laugh. He said, I feel so relieved that I was able to actually explain how I was feeling. Just imagine the power of poetry. It helps you explain so much. Just imagine you're having a very, very bad day. And then suddenly, somebody asks you, how do you feel? And you say, बेबसी जुर्म है, हौसला जुर्म है, जिंदगी तेरी हर एक अदा जुर्म है. तो मैं, if I become rest, बेबसी जुर्म है, I cannot become clueless. हौसला जुर्म है. If I try to do something, that also becomes very difficult. So what am I supposed to do? The moment you say it, you feel relieved. Just imagine somebody who's a manager and somebody asks him, how do you feel about your job? And he said, बेकरारी दिल की फितरत बन गई, अब यहाँ आराम ही आराम है. So just imagine when you say बेकरारी दिल की फितरत बन गई, अब यहाँ आराम ही आराम है. I feel restless all the time and it has become second nature to me. Why am I, trying to take you towards poetry? Not because I love poetry, but because poetry, literature, all these are important aspects of awareness. They give you emotional vocabulary. And it's important for you and for everyone else who is not here, but who is connected to you, to understand that it is important to work on emotional vocabulary because it helps you become aware of what is going on inside you. So please understand, in awareness, we're talking about three important things. First is emotional state. How do you feel right now? That's an important point. Second is your psychological state. After emotional state, I get into psychological state. To me, psychological state has four important variables, A, B, C, D. And I explain all of them, A, B, C, D. First is your apprehensions and your anger. Look, it's important for you to always be aware of your apprehensions and your anger. What do you mean by apprehension? I'll give you a simple example of it. I was counseling this, not couple, but the husband of, that couple. And he came to me and he said something very interesting. He said, our relationship isn't really going well these days. And I asked him what has happened. And he kept sharing a lot of things. And then I suddenly asked him, well, do you have an apprehension that she might leave you? When I said it, there was a pause. And then he said, yeah, I have an apprehension that she might leave me someday. I said, oh, why? And then we got into why. And then we realized that his behavior and his slightest and his smallest of behaviors in that relationship, and I'm talking about everyday relationship, was governed by a psychological state of apprehension. Because of that, there was insecurity. Because of that, there were caustic remarks. Because of there were casual comments. Because of that, he wasn't really there as an individual, but as an apprehensive individual. And that's how the things were falling apart. Well, it helped him understand that you cannot operate through a lens of apprehension when it comes to a relationship. Similarly, I see a lot of people in a psychological state of anger. They do not realize it, but they're upset with something. And because they're upset with something, they do not realize, but there is a very important concept of transference. You know that. Most of you must have heard it. There is a very important concept of projection. There is a concept of displacement in psychology. And all these three concepts talk about one important aspect. Of course, all three of them are, defense mechanisms. But the point is that most of the people do not realize, but they are upset about something. And because of that, a lot of other aspects of their life, they get affected. It's important to be aware of your psychological state's anger portion. I'll give you a simple example of it. I always tell people the worst thing that can happen to a kid is to be born to an angry father and a sad mother. I always tell this to people, that the worst thing that can happen to a kid is to be born to an angry father and a sad mother. And believe it or not, in India, this combination is most abundant. You always realize that almost out of 10 families, 6 families have this combination. You have an angry father or a sad mother. At least, if you talk about, an era where, of course, all of us were growing up. Then, of course, now things are changing. But I'm sure still, if not 6 out of 10, at least 5 out of 10 still holds that combination, which is very sad. But the problem is, why is this father angry? Why is this mother sad? And you would realize they do not even know that. They do not even question it. They do not even want to understand what is making them angry and what is making them sad. And because of that, they create a legacy of more angry and sad people without really realizing what went into it. So My second point, first point was apprehension and anger. Second point is B, as I said, A, B, C, D. So second point is B. And in B, it is belief and biases. So beliefs and biases. Always remember, ladies and gentlemen, always be aware of your beliefs and your biases. Well, when I said that I am a believer in science, there's nothing wrong with it as long as I know it is a belief I'm carrying. And I shouldn't use it as a filter to look at the world through. I mean, as it's a pretty old saying in neuropsychological domain that man is not a fallen angel; he is a risen ape. So, I mean, this is a saying that comes from evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology. So, evolutionary psychologists believe that man is not a fallen angel; he's a risen ape. I mean, he, she, of course. But the point is, when you are actually carrying this belief, and you know it is a belief, and you are at risk of looking at the world through it, then this belief doesn't become a problem. This belief becomes a premise. That this belief becomes a fundamental, what do you call, hypothesis that you are working with. But that doesn't become a problem. So what I'm trying to say is beliefs are not bad. Your awareness that there is a belief that you carry and you're working through is what matters the most. There's another thing with B, and that is bias. Well, I'll give you a simple example of it. I was working with this company, and I realized working with this company on an assignment, and I realized that whenever there would be a problem related to LR, labor relations, the person would never really ask his female subordinate to take care of it. He would always, give that to his male subordinate. So I asked this question. I said, do you think this female subordinate may not be able to take care of matters related to labor? He said, no, I don't have that feeling. I said, but we have talked for four, meetings, and every time there is something related to labor relations, you always, hint that the man is the one who is in a better position to take care of it. But you do not really delegate it to female. Why do you do so? And he said, I wasn't doing so consciously. Possibly subconsciously, I believed he would be a better guy. And I said, that's fine. And then he asked me, is it wrong or right? I said, I am not concerned with whether it is wrong or right. All I am concerned with is that you should know you are doing it. You should know you are doing it. As I said, there's a very important saying. I mean, bhago mit jago, as they call it. You become aware of it, or hosh, as they call it. It's important to stay in control of what is going on. And I'm not asking you to be perfect. All I'm asking you to do is to become aware. You should know that this is what is happening. And if you're doing that, of course, you're able to see it in a more logical way. So for A, we had apprehensions and anger. For B, we have beliefs and biases. Now let's come to C, that is complexes and compunctions. Well, complexes and compunctions, they're important aspects. First, most of us do not realize, but most of us have complexes. Few of us have inferiority complex of the way we look, possibly, that we are bespectacled, or that our height is not that good, or for that matter, our weight is less or more, or for that matter, we're not really as, educated as, we should be, or we do not really come from a family that has a, rich culture or something like that. I'll give you an example of it. I was talking to this man who had done his mechanical diploma just after 10th. You give that PPT and then you pursue diploma. So he was somebody who had done his diploma in mechanical, and after that his life took him to finance domain, and currently he is in his 50s, and he was discussing something with me, and then both of us realized actually during the discussion that he would always speak very less in the meetings with CEO, and he was one of the top 5 guys in the company, but he would speak very less in front of CEO or in the CEO meetings. And I helped him realize that a lot of it came from the understanding that he had this complex of not being from an IIM or an IIT, and all others were from IIM and IIT. And he was the only one who had a diploma. And after that, he had done, a course from one of the private universities in finance in his 40s. So he always carried this feeling inside that he wasn't good enough. He always carried this feeling inside that I am not as highly educated as most others are, and that would always affect him in terms of inability to showcase his talent in front of all the other people in the core team. But he did not realize it. But there was a complex, working behind it. Or compunction. What is compunction? Compunction is closer to two feelings. One is guilt, and second is regret. I still remember in our company only, there was this manager who was unable to deal with any subordination, or rather subordination is the wrong word for it, who was not able to deal with any lack of discipline, rather lack of discipline on one of our seniors part. And that senior manager was our manager who wasn't able to do it, and our senior person who was actually working under him was in his late 50s. And I mean, he's no more with us now, he retired. But I still remember that I was talking to that manager who was in his 30s and who was managing somebody who was in his 50s but was not able to manage him properly. I said, why are you not able to manage this man properly? Is it because of age? Is it because of the fact that he's elder to you by 20 odd years? What is the reason? And when we were discussing, something very important came out. What came out was that, this man in his 30s, at that time in his 30s, wasn't able to forget that in his father's last days, he was not good towards his father. And he wasn't behaving well with him. He didn't have good terms with him. And he would often raise voice in front of him. And he always carried this guilt. And because of that, whenever he would try to talk to this senior member of his team who was in his 50s, the feelings of that guilt that I had done something wrong to my father would actually get transferred here, and he wouldn't be able to talk to the senior man with any command or authority. I helped him realize that you are overcompensating for something that has already happened, and this time you have actually substituted the man for the feeling that was not meant for him. And believe me, it took a lot of time for me to persuade him. Yes, it took a lot of time to persuade him that this is what is going on with him. Well, somebody has possibly accidentally left his mic on. So, shall I do something about it? Okay, the man did it himself, hopefully. So, coming back to our C. So, there were complexes and compunctions and compunction at work, which most of the people do not really understand is happening to them. Last but not the least, D, ABCD. After apprehensions and anger, after beliefs and biases, after compunctions and complexes, let's come to the last one, D, that is desires and destinations. Yes, it's an important aspect of it. Desires and destinations. Mind you, this is one model that we have worked on, and of course, it is our model. So D is desires and destination. What do you mean by that? Well, I think here one needs to understand that more often than not, our behavior is governed by our implicit, our subconscious desires. We do not realize that, but then there is always a desire at work. In fact, when you talk to we talk about Bhagavad Gita. I believe Bhagavad Gita is possibly one of the most scientific, pieces of literature that we have in our world. But my problem is most of the people aren't really, using the knowledge that has been passed on to us. Well, somebody has just, asked a question that slide is not moving. Well, slide was not supposed to be moving. I was supposed to be speaking. So you focus. As I said, I understand that there are times when we are waiting for slides to move. But this is one slide, and I was supposed to be on this slide and discuss. And in a way, I'm trying to test how good you are at listening, I guess. So coming back, we were talking about desires and destinations. I think we should be aware of our desires and destinations. In Bhagavad Gita, there was an important point. I don't know whether most of you have read it or not, because it's an important one. There's a series of shlok in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is talking to Arjun, and he says, and he makes a chain. This is the chain. Dhyayato vishayan punsah sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamah kamat krodho bijayate क्रोधात भवति सम्मोहः sammohat smriti vibramah, smriti branshad buddhinasho, buddhinashat pranashyati. So he explained the whole chain of emotions. He said, Dhyayato Vishayan Punsa Sangasteshu Pajayate. So here, Sangateshu Pajayate, Sangastesh Upujayate. That means attachment comes from thinking about a certain subject, you know. And when attachment comes, gradually it becomes kama. Here, kama doesn't mean, sexuality. It means, desire. And then kamat krodho bhi jayate. So it becomes the root of, as they call, anger. And then krodhat bhavati sammoha. That means krodh, anger becomes what? Becomes sammoha. That is, it hijacks your, thinking, your mind. And krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat vismrati vibrama. So whenever you get hijacked, especially typically, amygdala hijack that one goes through, in that kind of emotional hijacking, you forget all the what do you call, all the gathered knowledge of years, wisdom of years, and then smriti branchad buddhinasho. And whenever you forget all that knowledge, your wisdom also gets into trouble. And buddhinashat pranashyati. And whenever that gets into trouble, well, the end is near. Beautifully explained. But what is at the core? At the core, it is dhyayato vishayan punsa. When you keep thinking about one particular subject. And that's why it is important for you to understand, are you actually desirous of something to an extent that it is hijacking every other aspect of your life? Very, very clearly, one has to be aware of it. So D for desire. And second D is after desire. Second D is, as I said, destinations. Most of us have very clear destinations in life. We want to reach somewhere. The problem is that whenever we are extremely obsessed with destinations, then more often than not, anything that happens in the process or journey, if there is a roadblock, we feel extremely upset about it. If we are over obsessed with destinations, I'll give you a simple example of it. We were discussing in our organization, and I was talking to one of my partners. So he's not an employee, he's a partner, of course. Both of us are co-founders. So I was talking to him, and we were talking about an important aspect of how to take, our organization ahead during COVID crisis. This was in April end, and we were talking about it, and I suddenly realized that, every time we were discussing how to make sure that we go through this crisis with less, or rather with minimum loss, he would often say that, but everybody has to be there. Everybody has to be there. Everybody has to be there. We cannot let anybody go. That's what he said. I said the problem with two of us right now discussing is that we are taking this as an assumption, as a given, that nobody from the organization is supposed to go. Which of course, ideally, all of us would want. Nobody would want anybody to leave the organization. And we're not talking about retrenchment or mass, laying off or something like that. We are a small company. But this logic that everybody is supposed to be on board is what is causing our strategy to become haywire. Because only when we take something as a constant that we start working with other variables in the equation. But there are times when you have to ask a question on the constant. Is it actually a constant, or it is becoming constraint? The problem is, more often than not, if we have very clear destinations in our mind, then they tend to affect our behaviors. They tend to affect our choices. And that's why I, urge you to be aware if there are very clear destinations or desires in your mind that are governing your behavior. I'm not talking about right or wrong. I'm not here to judge what is right or what is wrong. My job is to make you aware of it. If you're aware of your anger, your apprehensions, your beliefs, your biases, your compunctions and your complexes, your desires and your destinations, then whatever behavior you choose, well, of course, that entirely depends on you. You are entitled to your choices. But if you're aware of those choices, there is nothing wrong with it. But of course, it should be legitimate, and it should be, of course, not only legitimate, but also legible to people around you. So this was what we talked about first. Awareness is the understanding of what is going on inside oneself. Now, let's come to the second point. The second point is, but before that, you remember there were three aspects: emotional self, emotional state, psychological state, and there was third state in awareness. The third state was life state. Yeah, third state was life state. So in emotional state, we talked about emotional vocabulary. We talked about understanding what was going on inside us. In psychological state, we talked about ABCD. And in awareness, the third state is life state. And in life state, there are, of course, four aspects. One is your health. You should always be aware of state of your health. Yes, state of your health. The other day, I had posted a very important shlok from Valmiki Ramayana, in which when Bharat meets Ram in the jungle, and in one, of course, jungle would be a wrong word for it. And, Ram talks to him about, Valmiki Ramayana has an amazing amount of wisdom in terms of management and administration. So Ram talks to Bharat, and Ram asks something very important about his sleeping habits. I don't know whether you have read Valmiki Ramayana or not, but I'm talking about Ayodhya Kand and Soma Sarg I'm talking about. So Ayodhya Kand के 100वें सर्ग में ये जो है ये एक important श्लोक है. If I'm not wrong, 17वां श्लोक है. If I'm not wrong, I don't know, 15वां या 16वां या 17वां होगा शायद. So I was talking, I had posted it on social media, and I was discussing on it with somebody. So he asked something very interesting. Ram is asking to Bharat. Can you imagine Ram asking Bharat about what? He asked about three things. First, do you sleep well? Second, do you sleep on time? And third, do you meditate? And here by meditate, he meant deliberate. Do you deliberate on important state matters in the wee hours of night? So first, do you sleep well? Second, do you sleep on time? And third, do you sleep in a manner that you have the last hour of night reserved to deliberate on important aspects of state affairs? Brilliant shlok. What is it trying to do? He's trying to make him aware of the fact that the way you are physically has a great impact on the way you are emotionally and mentally. I mean, of course, it is not a secret. All of us know. For most of people do not realize, but there's a lot of problems that we go through these days are psychosomatic. Psyche we know is mind, and soma we know body. So psychosomatic problems are increasing. Why? Because most of us do not really realize that not only due to stress our physical problem is there, but our physical problem is there. That's why there is stress. So of course, it is an intertwined concept. I wouldn't want to go into details of that, because I think there's a lot to discuss. So you should be clear about four aspects of your life state. First, your health. More often than not, because people are not healthy, they behave very, eerily. They behave very erratically. They do not realize this. So one is health. Second is your relationships. If state of your relationships is not good, and now I'm talking about relationships in terms of not just family, but with your family, with your spouse, with your kids, with your parents, with your siblings, with your cousins, whatever it is. But make sure you are aware of this, that my life state currently of health is this, my relationships is this. Second, my finances. Of course, my finances. People don't realize this, that money cannot buy everything. But believe me, there are very less things that it cannot facilitate. I'm not saying money can buy everything, but believe me, money can facilitate everything, of course. But its value lies in facilitation. But most of us have come to attach money or its availability with our sense of security, and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, of course, it's Kali Yuga, so of course you cannot really believe on relationships all the time. Relationships would always be there, but then why not have some money in the PPF as well? I mean, it doesn't hurt. So your finances, if you're financially strained or financially constrained, strained, then it has an impact on you. So after health, relationships, and finances, there is work. Believe it or not, most of the people are more upset when they have not had a productive day. Yeah, there have been studies on it. I'm not talking about surveys. There's a difference between survey and study. I'm sure all of you know. So I'm not talking about surveys. There have been studies on it that there has been a question in management fraternity for long, that happy people are productive people are happy people. And I don't think management is about either or, it is about and. So I believe that it happens both ways. It is two ways. that happy people are productive people, and productive people are also happy people. If you have spent a very good day at work and you're very happy with your work, you tend to not only carry that happiness to your other circles, be it home or be it your your friend circle or something like that. It is important for you to understand that it again increases your reservoir of self-esteem, and that's why it is crucial that you are aware of the kind of work state that you have in your life. Okay. And it's important for all of you to understand that it is crucial to be aware of your state of work and how you are feeling at your workplace. How are you feeling about what you are doing? Because if you do not do that, believe me, sooner or later you don't realize, but it becomes the last nail in the coffin. And then the problems kind of multiply, they kind of aggravate. So I revise, and I said, I revise. We talked about awareness in terms of three important states. One was emotional state. How do you feel? Give an emotional vocabulary. Second was psychological state. And do you remember psychological state? It was ABCD: apprehension and anger, beliefs and biases, compunctions and complexes, desires and destinations. And of course, the last one was your life state. How do you feel in terms of your health, your relationships, your work, and your finances? Please make sure that you remember. But now this was only awareness. Now let's talk about the second aspect, and that was attunement. What is attunement? Attunement is observing others and interpreting those observations for cognitive and emotional empathy. So if you are aware, after that you get attuned. You now look at the other person, you observe him or her, you observe them, and then you ask yourself, what can you infer from your observations about them? And believe me, you have to use them as hypothesis, and you should be ready to drop every hypothesis once a new piece of information comes. Hypothesis doesn't mean theory. I hope all of you understand that. And of course, there are times when you would want to negate your hypothesis, because that's where the value of it lies. So attunement is observing others and interpreting those observations for cognitive and emotional empathy. Cognitive empathy means at thought level. Emotional empathy, how that person is feeling right now. So cognitive empathy is more about the thinking state of the other person and mental state. Emotional empathy is more about the emotional state. I'll give you a simple example of it. People who have very good skill of cognitive empathy but do not have emotional empathy become psychopaths, and people, sociopaths, or people who are very good at manipulating, people who are good at maneuvering. I mean, all these things. Why? Because they can think, they can feel what you must be feeling. They can think you must be thinking this, but then it doesn't reach them. They don't really feel the pain. They don't really feel the anguish. You know. And of course, people who have a lot of emotional empathy but do not have cognitive empathy, they are able to understand what the other person is feeling, but they're not able to do anything about it. So a good teacher, a good mentor, a good leader has to have, a good parent has to have both cognitive empathy as well as emotional empathy. And emotional empathy, through emotional empathy, you feel, but through cognitive empathy, you are able to not only verbalize it, but also understand the other person's thinking state. Okay. So then again, which state are we talking about in attunement? Well, ladies and gentlemen, states don't change. Again, there are three states. By observing people, you should be able to gauge their A, emotional state, B, their psychological state, and C, their life state. If you are able to gain insights into these three states of a person, then you can utilize these inputs, these pieces of information to behave well, isn't it? I'll come to how to do that, but I'm just explaining the model first. We have still got around 27 minutes, and I'll not use more than that, don't worry. So this was attunement. Now let's talk about the third and last. Third is adaptability. What is adaptability? Adaptability is utilizing awareness and attunement. Of course, you have become aware of yourself, you have become attuned to the other person. Then you utilize awareness and attunement to choose the most constructive response in the given conditions. How do you feel about it? Yes. How do I feel about it? How do the other people think about it or feel about it? If I have gained these two important pieces of information, awareness inside me, attunement, in the other people, and then you adapt. Because what is the use of awareness and attunement if you don't adapt? And that's where social intelligence comes. Most of the people do not realize that it is not what you vow to do, but what you do that makes a difference. As there's a wonderful saying by Mother Teresa, that on any day, helping hand is better than praying lips. So I really believe that what is the use of awareness or attunement if you do not know how to adapt? And so how to adapt? Well, only three things can be adapted. First, your words. Second, your behavior. And third, your actions. Yes. So you make some kind of changes in your words, what was second? Your behavior. And third, your actions. What do you say now? Can I say something different now? Can I say it differently? Because I have understood my awareness, I can see the attunement with the other person. So first was words. Second was behavior. Can I change some behavior? Can I change something about my behavior? And by behavior, I mean my non-verbal behavior. My gestures, my postures, my expressions, my vocal cues, my haptics, the way I touch the other person. There are times when, uh, when somebody doesn't have to do anything, somebody just has to hold your hand and he or she doesn't have to say anything and you feel good about it. Why? Because the other person was attuned to you, to your feeling, and what other person did was just a change in behavior. One of my friends, I can call him friend, but not a very close friend, just an acquaintance, more of it. He wrote a very important couplet. He said something so beautiful. He said, हाथ पकड़कर डांटो मुझे, खींचो मेरे कान, हाथ पकड़कर डांटो मुझे, खींचो मेरे कान, तुमने मेरा दुख सुना, तुम मेरे भगवान. Beautiful line. हाथ पकड़कर डांटो मुझे, खींचो मेरे कान, तुमने मेरा दुख सुना, तुम मेरे भगवान. Now nobody wants to listen to you, but then listening to somebody is actually adaptability. You realize that the person is full of a lot of pain and anguish, angst. So what do? You don't do anything. You just behave differently. You become more, eager as a listener. You become more receptive as a listener. You don't do much. You just sit there and listen. That in itself is adaptability. And there are times when you explain. There are times when you convince. There are times when you help out. These are all behaviors that are born out of adaptability. But that adaptability cannot become successful if it is not on the basis of your own awareness and attunement with the other person. These are two steps. Become aware of what you're feeling, attunement with the other person feeling, and adaptability. As simple as that. Okay. So the first one was, as I said, words, then second, behavior, and third is actions. There are times when you have to take actions. There are times when you have to do something about it. I'll give you a very simple example of it. Very simple example of it. Whenever there is somebody who meets me who meets me to get some, counseling sort of an experience, and what do? More often than not, you believe it or not, there are times when I ask the person to come for a long walk with me, and we just have long walks, because when the person is very restless, it is easier for him or her to talk about something when you are walking. At the same time, when you are counseling somebody, the other person is looking at you. So the other person becomes more conscious. And whenever I realize that the person is very conscious about himself or herself, I say, great, let's take a walk. The best part of walking is that when you are taking a long walk, then the other person is not facing you. The best part is we are actually walking laterally, isn't it? We are not actually talking to each other. So the consciousness, abates. The other person then starts talking about, his or her problems without much of, being conscious about being judged, or he or she is not really tapping into change in your expression or change in your posture. And that's when the person opens up. What did I do? I actually took an action and I said, great, let's take a long walk. So the point is, you have to understand that awareness and attunement, they are supposed to be then followed by adaptability. Now let's come to our last slide for the day. What do I mean by that? I mean, this is not the last slide, it will come after this. So the best part is you become aware of what is going on inside you. You get attuned to what the other person is doing, and then you adapt. I'll give you a simple example of it before I go to the last slide. Let's say you enter a classroom. Let's take let's visualize what do you call scene. Then you enter a classroom, and when you enter a classroom, you start teaching, and then you suddenly realize that two students are talking to each other. Okay. Now, two students are talking to each other. I am teaching. I turn back. I look at them. These two students are talking right now. Okay. Now, suddenly a surge of anger comes inside me. Let me be there for an instance. And suddenly, anger emerges. It starts coming up. You know, the first thing I should be doing is I should be aware of it. I should be aware of my emotional state. How am I feeling right now? Angry. Psychological state, is there something wrong? Yes, there is something wrong. What is that? Well, we were just imagine I was talking to my wife the other day about how the respect for teachers has gone down, and how I wouldn't say that, but then of course just imagine I'm saying that the respect for teachers has gone down, and now they'll be redundant very soon or something like that. Now, if I'm aware that my anger or my apprehension about my career might be playing a role in my anger at this instance, and I say, well, this could be one of the reasons, that I'm feeling angry, and this could be one of the reasons why these two, kids talking to each other is making me upset, because somewhere down inside, I might believe that they are trying to do it in order to irritate me. They don't respect me. Now, the third part, you remember that? Third part was my life state. I also asked myself, am I healthy right now? And I said, no, I've not been sleeping well for the last 2, 3 nights. So this could also be one of the reasons why I'm feeling angry on these two kids. Now, when I have got these 3 inputs in my mind in say 5 to 6 seconds, then I look at them, that they are talking. But how are they talking? Are they giggling? No, they are not giggling. One of them is slightly tense. How could I make out? Because, his eyebrows were like this. So this could not be, fun. This could only be anguish or sadness. So this person is not actually talking to the other person because he wants to have fun, but because there is something concerning him or her. Now, the moment I have got attuned to this person, you remember, first was awareness. Second was attuned to this person. I have observed them. Then I adapt. And what is that adapting? I say, hello, yes, let's say the person's name is Ramesh. And I say, Ramesh and Mahesh, well, there seems to be something that you would want to discuss. So I would request if you could just go out of classroom, discuss it, and then come back and sit. Is it possible? And two of them look at me and I say, no, I'm not angry. I'm doing it so that you also talk and other people do not get disturbed. Okay. Please go ahead, come back. I have nothing against it. Okay. Both of them walk outside. And when they all walk outside, I again get aware of something. I again get attuned to them. And I realize there's something wrong in the way this person walked out of classroom. There is something. It was slower than usual. So what do? Then I ask everybody to just stay there quiet. And then I go outside and I say, Ramesh, what happened? Something wrong? And Ramesh said, sir, I just got a message from my hometown that, grandfather is not well. And I do not know what to do. And now I put my hand on his shoulder. Remember, you have to be gender conscious here, because it is not advisable if you're relating to the other gender, because there are, of course, etiquettes and do's and don'ts of it. But just assume that Ramesh is in front of me. I put my hand on his shoulder and I say, Ramesh, don't worry. What you can do right now is you can call somebody at your hometown and confirm what is going on before then you decide what to do. And sorry, but I'll go into the class, and after class, if something I can do about it, just let me know. Now, what did I do? I applied a skill of emotional and social intelligence in my everyday behavior. By doing what? By applying these 3 sub skills. I got aware, I got attuned, and I adapted. I got aware, I attuned, and I adapted. If you can do it well with everybody in your life and every time, of course, it is not possible to do it every time. Of course, it is not possible to do it with everybody. But my point is, it is never about always. I repeat, it is never about always. It is always about often. Yes. Whatever you often do, that's what you are. And if you are emotionally and socially intelligent, then believe me, this is precisely the kind of state you would enjoy more often than not, being sorted. So I kind of revise it, whatever we have discussed till now. We have discussed awareness, attunement, adaptability, and now let's come to the last slide. It's a kind of summary to what we have discussed. So whenever you are in a situation, first be aware. Aware of what? Remember, emotional state. You become aware of your psychological state. You remember in psychological state, there were 4 aspects: apprehension and anger, beliefs and biases, compunctions and complexes, desires and destinations. There was life state. Be aware of the current state of your relationships, your health, your work, and your finances. All of them have an impact on your behavior, your choices. So please make sure that you are aware of that. In attunement, again, get attuned to other person's emotional state, psychological state, and life state. Just the way I did in that example when I tried to attune to the other person. Okay. And then you adapt. You adapt in what? You adapt in words, behavior, and actions. Isn't this what we talked about? Okay. So now let's come to, because I've got 20 minutes to my 1 hour 30 minutes. I'll complete it, complement it by giving you some very clear how to apply for that. Okay. So let's move to last 15-20 minute discussion. How to become aware. How to become aware of your emotional state, psychological state, and life state. I've got 3 important tips for you. First, interoception. Well, it is not wrongly spelled. It is actually interoception. In neuropsychology, interoception means listening to your autonomic nervous system signals. What do you mean by autonomic nervous system? Autonomic nervous system is the nervous system that works with your internal organs. That is, you must have observed, your breath, your breathing goes heavy or light. You sweat, or you perspire a lot, or you get dry mouth, or you get you start flickering your eyelids a lot, or you feel a kind of what do you call it, thirsty. All these things, these are signals of autonomic nervous system. So all of them will tell you something about your emotional state. So please make sure that you apply interoception. You get into observation of what is going on inside you. You must have observed every now and then, when I think I'm thirsty, I do this. Most teachers do not do that because they're not even observant about how they're feeling inside. I'll come to that. In fact, the best example of interoception was when I had gone to take a session around 11 years back in a city called Mandsaur, which is in MP. So I'd gone there to take a session. I still remember. And at that time, the institute that I'm talking about, that Institute of Technology Mandsaur, in order to reach there, I had to take lift from the, not highway, but from the main road. If you had to go there, then you had to take a lift. So I took lift. I took lift from of course, truckwala. And listen to it. This is very interesting one. So I sat with that truckwala, and he was driving. And I've always had this habit of talking a lot to truckwalas and autowalas, drivers, because I think they are very well traveled. And the primary 2 ways of being educated in life were being well read and well traveled. So always, never miss a single chance to talk to somebody who's well read and well traveled, because traveling is the basic, way of education. Of course, most of us are deprived of it right now. But whenever there is a chance, please make sure you never miss a single chance to travel, because travel teaches you more about anything else. And I'm talking about tourism. I'm talking about traveling. Okay. So now coming back to it. So I was talking to this man who was driving, typical truckwala. And I said something very interesting. The most important thing is that when you talk to a truckwala, then you cannot really talk something which is portraying him in a lesser light. So allow me to have this, explain this conversation in Hindi, because it happened in Hindi. If I'll explain it in English and I'll try to translate it, but the translation, the meaning would get lost. So this is what happened. I said to that truckwala, I said, "Kitni tez chala lete ho?" I said to him, "Kitni tez chala lete ho?" When I said to him, "Kitni tez chala lete ho?" So he looked at me. He gave that stare to me, and he said, "कितनी तेज चला लेते हो मतलब? बस चम्मच पे पाँव रखते हैं और दबा देते हैं." चम्मच here meant accelerator. I mean, of course, they have their own vocabulary. As I said, everybody has vocabulary. So he said, बस चम्मच पे पाँव रखते हैं और दबा देते हैं. So I said, चम्मच पे पाँव रखते दबा देते हो, तो हटाते कब? सुना आपने कॉन्वर्सेशन अभी तक? मैंने उससे पूछा कितनी तेज चला लेते हो, तो उसने कहा कितनी तेज चला लेते हो मतलब बस चम्मच पे पाँव रखते हैं और दबा देते हैं. तो मैंने कहा फिर हटाते कब? So he looked at me and he said, जब दिल की धड़कन बढ़ने लग जाती है तो हटा देते हैं. Oh my God, what a beautiful way to explain awareness and mindfulness. He listens to his heartbeat. Can you imagine? A truck wala taught me a lesson which was so important. I asked truck wala, how fast do you drive? And he said, I just push the accelerator. I put my foot on the accelerator and I press it. And I said, when do you take it off? And he, in his own innocent way, said, when my heartbeats start rising, I take it off. Just imagine. I always tell people, I always tell managers, whenever I'm training them or whenever somebody takes our online course, it is already there in our pre-recorded videos, that whenever you are shouting at a subordinate, just keep track of your heartbeats. If your heartbeats is rising, now your role is not shouting at his role. Now you are shouting at him. You are shouting at her. Your heartbeats will tell that too. And for that, interoception is necessary. What is second? Second after interoception is introspection. What do you mean by introspection? I mean, all of us know it now. Introspection is, of course, what is going on, inside ourselves and what is going on in our life. I mean, of course, it is a combination of introspection and retrospection. I'll give you a simple example of it. Believe me, ability to stand apart from yourself and look at yourself objectively is possibly one of the most important human traits, uniquely human traits. Most people do not have that. Most animals do not have that. Some animals have. And of course, we'll get into that someday. But point is that introspection is a very important aspect. I'm a great fan of introspectiveness of somebody called Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. I think Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was a man of great introspection. How do I know that? You'll say, how do you know that? Well, I know that because I have read his letters. I don't know how many of you have read Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi's letters. Look, whatever is talked about or told about him, do not get into it. Just get into what he has written. There are volumes and volumes on what he has written, his letters. And the powerful introspection. He has talked about everything. He has introspected about his problem with, sexuality, his problem with jealousy, his problem with male dominance over female, his problems, not someone else's problems or society's problems, his problems. And he has got into every detail of what he has felt in his life. And it was amazing. And that's why he was such a great man in many ways. Of course, everybody is good and bad. Nobody is good or bad. He also had some things which most of us may not agree with. But what you cannot take away from him is the fact that he is an amazing man at introspection. I'll give you an example of this. Once he was actually, asked to come to UK at that time, of course, Britain. He was asked to come to, Britain to take a session, to give a session. So the whole hall was full. I mean, we're talking about 1930s. So he went there and he took a session. Not 30s, I guess, 40s, because Mahadev Desai was his secretary at that time. So Mahadev Desai, I'm sorry, it was Mahadev Desai. So Mahadev Desai, I mean, he went there. And everybody was there to listen to him. Because, of course, when you want to criticize somebody and when you're critical towards somebody, then you would want to attend that session even, isn't it? Because you would want to understand what to disagree with. So all those people from Britain, they were there in that hall and they were sitting right there. And Mahatma Gandhi spoke for 1.5 hours, extemporaneously. He spoke for 1.5 hours. And after 1.5 hours, the whole hall, of course, people stood up and they clapped for him. After that happened, a few people went to Mahadev Desai. And they went to Mahadev Desai and said, Mr. Desai, Gandhi spoke for 1.5 hours, but he did not have any notes. He did not have anything to look at. Because most of the speakers we have seen, they have notes, but he had nothing to look at. How did he do it? And look at the answer of Mahadev Desai. Mahadev Desai said, he is Gandhi. What he feels, what he thinks, what he says, and what he does, they're all the same. Notes are for you and me. We feel something else, think something else, say something else, and do something else. Wow. It still gives me goosebumps. What an amazing answer. He was an integrated person because he would introspect. As I said, I may not agree with everything that he did. I may not be happy with everything that he had done. But my point is, that doesn't take away respect for introspectiveness of this great man. And that's why it is important that you introspect. You always introspect. Look, there's a difference between personality and character, ladies and gentlemen. Personality is who you are when you are in front of all. Yes, personality is who you are when you are in front of people. And character is who you are when you are alone. Yes. Personality is actually a word based on persona. This is term, used for, masks that were worn by, Roman actors in Greek plays. So it's not just about personality, ladies and gentlemen. It's about character. Personality is who you are when you are in front of people, and character is who you are when you are alone. Please understand that you remember that there's a difference between personality and character. And people often ask me, what do you mean by confidence? Well, I always tell people, confidence is inversely proportional to the gap between personality and character. Of course, the lesser the gap between personality and character, more confident you are as a person. And I'm talking about unconditional confidence. I'm not talking about confidence as a public speaker, but confidence not as a manager or teacher. So my point is, it is about making sure that there is less gap between the two. Of course, you can never bridge the whole gap because we are social animals. All of us will have skeletons in our closets. So we'll never be ideal people. I've always been very afraid of ideal people because I really believe that, idealism is the first step to hypocrisy, because you cannot be ideal all the time. There will always be a human flawed, element in you, and that's fine. But please make sure you bridge this gap. But that comes from introspection. Well, let's come to the next one, and that is inspection. Yes, we are approaching the end, and I'll end exactly in 1 hour 30 minutes. That was when I started from. Okay. So inspection, what do you mean by inspection? Inspection means you also look at yourself, what you are doing right now. How is it different from introspection? Well, introspection is a process. Introspection is an event. Inspection is an event. Introspection is a process. It goes on all the time. Okay. But let's talk to inspection. I'll give you an example of it. In Islam, there is a very important character in Islam, that is Ali. Ali is such an important character in Islam because he is not only cousin of Prophet Muhammad, but he's also his son-in-law. And there's a very important anecdote from Ali's life, because Ali is a great man, no doubt about that. There's a very important anecdote from Ali's life. I'll explain that to you in short so that you get aware of what inspection is. So the story goes this way, that Ali was in a battle and he was in front of somebody who was a pretty old rival. And, they were really, eager to get rid of each other. So, something happened, and during the fight, Ali was able to pin him down. And when he was able to pin him down, the rival, and Ali had this sword in his hand, and he was about to, kill that rival in the battle. Of course, it was an ethical battle, and he was about to kill that man. And just when he was about to kill that man, this man spitted. This man spit on Ali. Of course, spitted is the wrong word. Spit is a better word because, of course, the second form is not spitted in a way. So he spit on Ali. The moment he spit on Ali, story goes that Ali just froze in that moment. And Ali said to his rival, go away. Go away. Jao maaf kiya. Go. Some other time, I'll kill you. So rival stood up and he said, what are you doing? You'll hardly get this opportunity again. Why are you letting me go? And Ali said something very interesting. He said, I am a warrior. I am a warrior. मैं एक योद्धा हूं. His line was, I mean, of course, it is translated again. मैं एक योद्धा हूं, मैं हिंसा भी बिना क्रोध के करता हूं. Look at the line. He said, मैं योद्धा हूं, मैं हिंसा भी बिना क्रोध के करता हूं. I am a warrior. And if I am supposed to kill, I am supposed to kill out of duty, not out of anger. But because of your spitting on me, right now there is anger inside me. And if I'll kill you in anger, that will be wrong. That will be unethical. Then I'll not be a warrior. Beautiful example of how important it is to be very inspecting towards oneself. Let's come to the other portion now. How to get attuned? Well, I have already explained it in that example with those kids in the classroom. You have to look at the other people. My problem is people are not looking at each other these days. You have to look at the other person. Only if you look at the other person that you will get to understand what the other person is feeling. Why? Well, there is a reason for it. The reason is pretty simple. The reason is that words can express thoughts, but only body expresses emotions. Yes, that's true. Only body expresses emotions. But you say, I mean, you're wrong, Dr. Atre. You just said that, you can express emotions through your words. No, you can only express your thoughts on your emotions through words. And that will be enough for you when it comes to awareness. But believe me, if you want to attune to somebody, you will have to look at the other person. Have you ever wondered when you talk to a kid who is 4-year-old, 3-year-old, then even when you are stopping him or her from doing something, he doesn't listen to you. He looks at you because he wants to see or she wants to see whether you really mean it or not. If he or she thinks you mean it through your face, then he or she won't do it. Otherwise, even if you repeatedly tell him or her to stop doing something, he or she would not do that. That's why non-verbal communication is also called pre-verbal communication, because it came much before words. That's the way we are, isn't it? So please look at people. Second, listen to people. Yes, it's important. Listen to people. I'll give you a simple example before I end this point. One of my colleagues, she had a problem in her family, and she came to me and we were discussing, and she said that her brother, who was in his 30s, her brother, and my colleagues in her 40s. So she said her brother doesn't behave well with their parents. I mean, of course, they're siblings, their parents, I mean, they're same parents. So she said, my younger brother who's in 30s, he doesn't behave well with our parents. So what do I do? So I said, let's discuss about it. And she said, I did not like what she did, but I think that was well within her rights. People are entitled to do their mistakes as well. She had recorded a conversation that they had, sister, brother. And she said, I want you to listen to it. So I first of all denied. I said, I wouldn't want to listen. But she said, no, you should listen. I said, okay, if you wish, and if it helps. So I listened to that conversation. And in the conversation, let me repeat this conversation for you. He was all the time saying, your dad does this, your dad does this, your mom does this, teri mummy, tera papa, teri mummy, tere papa, teri. And ye, wo, ye, everything. So when everything, went ahead, I said, I have a problem with this line. Because throughout this conversation, he was mentioning his dad or mom, not as dad or mom, but your dad, your mom. What is the reason? And believe me, we went into the reason. I mean, she shared that there are 2 sisters and 1 younger brother who is in his 30s, and parents live with, the brother. And she shared that he was ignored by, their parents at the outset. And I said, look, this is where the problem is. And how did I find out? How did I find out? I found through those words. The words were tere papa, teri mummy. He was never saying papa, mummy. Saying tere papa, teri mummy. So he never really felt that, he got the, due attention from parents. And that's where things go wrong. So listen, I mean, people reveal a lot about themselves. And of course, learn. You got to learn about people. For instance, I'll give you a very simple example of it. The example is that I was, teaching in one of our other companies where there is a student training. So this girl came to me for an interview, and it was IPM interview. IPM Indore is a course, and she came just a day prior to interview, and she came to me for some important tips, etc. And I was sitting in a cabin with her, and I was talking to her, and she was not listening by looking at me. She was nodding well and she was following every word, but she was not looking at me. So, it's a common sense that you ask the other person to look at you. That why don't you look at people, while listening, because that will be a better impression. So the moment I, tried to do that, before that, I realized she had come with her mother. And she was sitting right there. I mean, we have this glass cabin. So she was sitting in the lobby. And one of our counselors was talking to her mother about something. And her mother was listening the same way. Believe me, her mother was also listening the same way. She was nodding, she was following, but she was looking down. And I said, it will be very, mistaken of me to ask this girl to change a habit that has come almost in legacy from her mother one day prior to interview. And I said, okay, fine. Look, Pita, if you can look at the other person while listening, that will be great. But if you can't, don't force it on yourself. You won't get rejected for it. Because in any case, the habit is wired inside you. Ladies and gentlemen, she got selected. But I was very happy that I was able to learn something about her background by observing her mother outside in the lobby. So that I could understand that this is a habit that has actually come through wiring, through programming. And the person is not doing it by her own will. I mean, I wanted to make her aware of that, but I also did not want to make her upset about it. Ladies and gentlemen, last but not the least, you have to adapt. You have to adapt your words, your behavior, your actions. I can talk, about each point for an hour because, I mean, this is my job. This is my work. I always tell people, aapka fun hi kafan tak aapka saath deta hai. And that's why it is important to be in love with your work, to be very, very, I don't think devotion is a good word. I mean, for me, my work is extension of myself, just the way for most of you it is. So I'll not really take much of your time, but let me explain this last point. Adaptability is about customization. So customize your words, behavior, and actions according to situations. Customize is adapting according to situation. That is called customization. Personalization means adapting word, behavior, and actions according to person. If it is about situation, it is customization. If it is person, it is personalization. And if it is about goals, of course, there will always be change in goals. So whenever there is a change in goal, then it is called optimization. So make sure that you are aware, you are tuned to other person, and then you adapt your words, behaviors, and actions through customization, personalization, and optimization. If you can do that, of course, that will be the best way to utilize emotional and social intelligence. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad that all of you were here for 1.5 hours. It came straight after Meenaji's session. And I'm sure Meenaji had already talked about awareness aspects because meditation, mindfulness, all these are important concepts in awareness. I'm glad that all of you were here. I'm glad Meenaji gave me an opportunity to be part of this session. If you have any questions, this may not be the right time because I'm sure all of you are hurrying into break and next session as well. And Meenaji had told me, I had learned that there would be a test as well. So I'm sure you wouldn't be in the best position to ask questions. But if you have any question, feel free to contact me anytime through my social media channels. All the information is here, and I'll be very happy to assist you with any matters. Meenaji, over to you. मीना जी आपका म्यूट है इसलिए आपका आवाज नहीं आ रहा है.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thank you. It was a great session. And as a great psychologist, you are understanding the things. That is the main thing. You are proving your social intelligence that what must be the psychology of all the participants and what happens on the last day. That's what we discussed also, that we wanted to keep your session early. But fine, it is as the flow has went. And but it has been wonderful because people must have got a soothing experience, as in the morning they experienced a meditation and all. So after that, following such cool and such understanding type, deep down emotional understanding psychology, this session must have gone very well. That participants must be, I don't know, they are of course they are writing great session. Just one question. Yes, Shrikant CPG, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thanks for the session, Mr. Sandeep.
Yes.
One question is, Is it possible to do a qualitative and quantitative assessment of all these things, like all the emotional states? One more thing, by becoming cognitive about whatever is happening around us, now we begin to notice all the artificial and diplomatic tendencies of people in the corporate and all. So obviously, once we adapt, we'll be doing a lot of customization and personalization. But don't you think we'll not get the real joy of being aware of all these things and intentionally customizing it for to maybe get a mutual benefit or create a win-win situation? I don't know how to put it. This is what I'm thinking.
Shrikantji, thanks for your question. First of all, you said something very important. I've always believed in the saying that truth became the first victim of civilization. Well, that's actually true. You know, truth actually became the first victim of civilization, and that had to be the case. Why? Because believe me, social animals are so layered in approach, Shrikantji, that it is not possible to, have a one size fits all approach in life. And there is no ready-made solution to a man-made problem, of course. So when you said something very important, that you see a lot of, what do you call manipulation, you see a lot of acting of people around you, and you also get upset. And in the process of customizing, you can adapt according to, situation or person, but you also feel pain. You also don't feel joy of authenticity. You do not feel that, authentic self not getting its time.
Correct.
But I believe this is where, Shrikantji, if you have not, I mean, I'm not assuming that you haven't, but if you have not, I recommend reading Bhagavad Gita to you. Shrikantji, please read Bhagavad Gita to you. It has answer to this question so wonderfully well explained that I can't tell you. I mean, of course, I cannot compete with the great man, when it comes to explaining Gita. But I think Sri Krishna had talked about this very concept when Arjun asked him about what are qualities of sorted men. So Shrikantji, I would love to answer this in detail. But for now, would you be happy if I'll just end with this point that please read Bhagavad Gita, and then if you reach me through any of the social media handles, I'll be extremely happy to discuss. Is that fine?
Fine. I'll read the
Thank you so much.
I'll reach out to you.
In
Thank you.
continuation
Good afternoon,
to
sir.
this.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Yes.
Sir.
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, sir.
Mhm.
Hello.
Yes, you are audible.
Appreciate your wonderful lecture on emotional intelligence. It's a
Thank you,
need of
Ramkrishnan ji.
hour because everywhere is getting emotion immediately. My question is, there are few books, textbooks says that some work will be completed. We have some type of emotion. We cannot eliminate emotion completely from our routine work. Can you kindly explain that part, sir?
Well, of course, emotions. I mean, I'll give you a very simple example of it, Ramkrishnan. If you look at your brain design, then Trion brain model of Paul MacLean explains it very well. That this is the part of your brain where, survival functions are, there. And then there is emotions in the limbic system. And then there is neocortex, which is intelligence. So emotions are impulses that come up all the time. And there is top-down control of your cortex. So this is where emotional intelligence comes into play, that emotions come and then there is regulation by cortex. So emotional intelligence means that you let emotions surface, but then regulate them intelligently, isn't it? For example, I mean, there was one man who went to South Africa who was traveling in a train. He was thrown out of the train and he sat there for 3 hours on the platform. In first 1 hour, he felt amazing rage. In next 1 hour, he felt amazing resigned attitude and he wanted to leave and go back to India. But after 2 hours, he stayed there for 1 more hour and he decided that I should neither fight nor escape. I should stay and change. And just imagine if he would have sat on that platform for just less than 2 hours. The history of this world would have been different. The man was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. So he had an emotion, but he used it intelligently. He said, look, I have an emotion and now I have to utilize it in order to do something constructive. So that's what emotional intelligence in its essence is. Ramkrishnan, I hope I could answer that.
You meant to say that we need to balance.
Yes, you need to balance and regulate, not just balance, regulate. I mean, I always tell people use emotions as if there is a switch. You switch it on or off. I say, no, it is not like switch. It is like regulator. Just the way there is, a fan which can run on 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can regulate it. Just the way you can regulate a fan, you can regulate emotions. Why do you need to switch on or off? It is not tube light, it is a fan.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a nice analogy. It's a fan, no, not tube light. Huh? That's nice. Yes, Sandeep ji, which version of Bhagavad Gita you recommend? Means some specific one or?
Meenaji, I have read 9 tippanis on.
Yeah, that's why I am
Gita,
asking you that which
but
one.
I'll be honest, Meenaji, the
ji.
original authentic translation by Gita Press Gorakhpur, the red one, is still the most important translation.
Fine.
But I would recommend that everybody reads, that translation first and not a tippani. But if at all somebody wants to really listen to, really read something extremely good and practical, then I think it would be Vinoba's Gita tippani. So Vinoba's tippani on Gita, I believe, is the best one according to me.
Okay, that's what, because so many are available.
Yeah, so
it is
many,
very.
so many. Everybody has written on it. Even Gandhi, Vivekanand ji, Osho, and Swami Chinmayanand ji, everybody has written on Gita. But I believe Vinoba came closest to it, Meena, because Vinoba was very close to ground, as you know.
Can you discontinue the screen share so that we can have you?
Oh, yes, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are blessed to have different and deep as well as different type of insights into each and every happening in our lives. And that has been Shri Sandeep Atreji. Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir, for igniting a different type of vision, different type of insight in every happening. That's what at least I learned from your session. Yeah. So we are very thankful from Manit Bhopal to that you spared time for us.
Thank you, Meenaji. The pleasure was all mine, and the honor was also mine.
And I suppose it must have been very useful to our participants, and there will be further interactions maybe there. Somebody was asking for your mobile number in the chat box.
I'll write it in the chat.
Yeah, in the chat box, people were asking. Yes, Professor Tanmay. So day by day, session by session, we are heading towards the culmination, and next session will be valediction, in which we shall be having the director of Indira Gandhi Arts and Culture University, Dr. Sachidanand Joshi ji. He'll be coming very soon for the next session. So we look forward for that. And we see all these things which we have learned. So as we'll summarize in that thing. Yes, Tanmaji. Tanmay, please unmute.
Okay. Okay. I think he's not admin. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope it's okay now. It's better if we remind people that. Okay, Tanmay.
Yes, sure. Thanks a lot. I would once again just like to formally give a vote of thanks to our expert speaker who has been talking about the emotional intelligence as well as the various dimensions that were pretty much helpful for all of us to understand the implications and on how we should be controlling and understanding and evaluating ourselves on various aspects. I'm sure all of these great words of wisdom have helped all of us. As we can see, the feedback and every excellent session and all of these things have started to come. Thanks a lot for your time, sir. And we hope to hear from you soon, sir. Thanks a lot once again. Namaskar.
Yeah, we are meeting for the next session sharp at 2:30. And we had requested you to give your names for announcing so that your feedback can be organized in a better manner. Feedback for the entire 5-day session. And if you give us your names, we'll be able to, Mr. Tanmay will be able to call you sequentially and organize, because thereafter we are having test as 4:30.
Right.
Thank you.
So it's just for just a short thing. Although throughout the 5 days, we all of us have been having the opportunity to interact with all of us quite a lot, but still, just for the sake of the last few words about the session, only those who are interested to share their opinions can let us know. Others, definitely everyone has been interacting throughout the 5 days, as well as the feedback forms have already been shared, would be shared for this day and the overall session too. So not a problem. All of your voices are definitely being heard and saved with all of us. So we'll definitely be able to once again meet some other time as per your convenience and as per your intent and your motivation to learn more and more, and to keep grooming on with your personality with such eminent speakers as we had today. Thank you once again, Sandeep sir. Namaskar.
Thank you, Sandeep ji. As rightly said by one of our participants, all good things come to an end, but I see this is just a beginning. So that's what we look in your respect also. This is just a beginning that we have begun with one session, and certainly would like to have more and more sessions and more insights into it. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Meenakshi. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Tanmay.
Sure, sir. Thanks a lot.